Hi, my name is Allie Schmidt. This is my dad, Dan. He owns Catron's Glass.
Thanks, Allie. Things like doors and windows go into making a house. But when it's your home, you expect more, like the great service and selection you'll get from Catron's Glass. Vinyl replacement windows from Catron's come with a lifetime warranty, including accidental glass breakage replacement. Also ask for custom shower doors and many other products and services. Call 962-1636. Locally owned with local employees for nearly 30 years.
Catron's Glass, the clear choice.
Welcome to the BeTempered podcast, where we explore the art of finding balance in a chaotic world.
Join us as we delve into insightful conversations, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you navigate life's ups and downs with grace and resilience.
We're your hosts, Dan Schmidt and
Ben Spahr.
Let's embark on a journey to live our best lives.
This is BeTempered.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the BeTempered podcast, episode number
30.
Rolling right along.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, we have someone who is a man that started the business that I currently own and have owned for the past 20 plus years. And he's someone I admire, someone that I met at 24 years old, and he had a ton of experience in the glass industry, not just from owning a business, but starting a business from nothing and working in the glass industry before that. He's a man full of faith. He's just an all around good man. And so today we're going to hear his story, and I'm excited for the world to hear his story. So Jim Catron, welcome to the BeTempered podcast.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we are glad to have you, and glad for you to come here and share your story. I know there's a little anxiousness, and that's okay. Everybody that comes up here is always like, well, this is a little different than what I expected.
Episode 30, I'm still anxious.
Yeah, Ben gets nervous every time. He has to go to the bathroom, throw up.
Yep.
It's kind of weird. So Jim, what we want to do is like we talked about earlier, is we want to hear your story. You have a unique story growing up, and then talk about getting into the glass business and then starting your own business. But to start at the beginning, can you talk about your childhood growing up?
Yes. I can remember back when I was about 5 years old, and my brother was almost 3. My dad worked in the coal mines, and he was always off and gone someplace. We'd stay here, we'd stay there, So we was staying with my grandma. And my dad was gone. I don't know where he was at. He's off working someplace. But my mother was a wonderful person, dear mother. And she and my grandma got into an argument one day about us boys making too much noise. And Grandma told my mother, she said, well, you can just take James and leave David with me. And my mother said, well, I got news for you. I'm not leaving either one of them. I'll just take them both and go. So she took us and we went down to St. Charles, Virginia, where I was born. And her brother lived down there. He was a sheriff. And he put us up. We stayed there for about 3 months, she said. And my dad came back, and he come in, and he had some stuff with him, and he was ready for us to move. We moved to a little town just 20 miles, maybe not that far, maybe 10 miles from St. Charles to, it's a Palais place that was called Pentley. And it was a little coal mining camp. And we moved in this little house. It had 2 bedrooms, a little living room and a kitchen. Bathroom was outside. And we stayed there 2 months.
Okay.
My dad moved again. Make a long story short, he moved every time you turn around.
Really?
Yeah, he just couldn't stay still. So we moved and moved and moved. And finally he said, I'm going to leave here and go to Kentucky. So we went to Kentucky. And when we got to Kentucky, we moved in a little one-room house. All it had sitting in the center of it was a pot-bellied stove.
Okay.
And we was all lost. We didn't know what to think.
Yeah.
And my dad was a coal miner, like I said.
Yeah.
And that's all he knew. So we lived there for 2 or 3 months, and we moved again. So we moved from Harlan, Kentucky, up to Everett's. And Everett's, we moved from Everett's to Shields, all in a period of 3 months.
Shoo. Wow. And how old were you, roughly?
I was 5.
5 years old.
Yeah.
5 years old, and you're just moving every couple
time you
months.
turn around,
Yeah.
we was moving. So we moved in a little place called Shields, Kentucky, and started in school. Well, I liked school.
Yeah.
We was there about 2 months, and Dad moved. I got some friends and moved off and left them. So from Shields, Kentucky, all the way up through Clover Splint, Clover Darby, Llewellyn, I can't remember all those names up through there. Was about 8 or 9 little towns, 10, 15 miles apart. And we lived in every one of them. Mm. I went to this school in Shields. I went there for about a month. Dad moved again. He was involved in these truck mines, they called them back then. They used little truck mines where 2 or 3 or 4 men get together and open up a seam of coal, dig the coal out, haul it off, and run out, and then they go someplace else.
Okay.
So I just got tired of moving.
Yeah, I bet.
Now, by this time, I was, I think, 7 or 8. I was getting older, going to school and trying to learn and trying to keep friends. Couldn't keep friends. I didn't have no friends. Well, one day I told Mom and Dad, I said, I ain't want to go to school no more. So Dad said, you have to go to school. I said, okay. So I'd play hooky. I wouldn't go to school because I just didn't want to go and get involved with people and not have friends.
Right.
You know, because I'd have to run off and leave them.
Yeah.
Well, we went there for, like I say, about 2 months, and he moved up to Clover Darby. And I thought, well, this would maybe be better. It's a little bit bigger school, a little bit bigger town. And I thought, well, I'll go back to school. So I went back to school, and I swear we wasn't there a month. He moved again.
Jeez.
In 1 year's time, we moved 11 times.
Wow.
So when I was about, I guess, 12 years old, Dad said, hell, well, we're going to leave here. We're going to Ohio. So we moved to Ohio, up in Akron. We moved right behind the Wonder Bread Bakery Company.
Okay.
Boy, it smelled good.
Yeah. I bet.
So we lived there, I think it was about 3 months. I was about 12 then. And then Dad was working for some kind of construction outfit. I don't know what it was. But anyway, he come in one day and told Mom to get packed. We're moving. We're going to Indiana. Okay. We come to Richmond. He got to work. He got a job at one of the construction places in town. I forget which one it was, but anyway, he worked there for a little while, and we lived down on Abington Pike.
Okay.
Down close to Abington.
Yeah.
And Dad come in one day and he said, "I got another job. We're going to have to move."
Oh my.
So, okay. They moved. They moved back on 7th Street in Richmond.
Okay.
Right down there where there was a school over. I forget the name of that school. But anyway, I said to myself, I'm not doing this no more. I'm not going to school. So I quit. I played hooky. I done everything. Nobody at school didn't bother asking where I was at or nothing because I hadn't signed up.
Okay.
So I just would go out and do whatever I could do.
Okay.
And when I did that for almost 2 years. And I went down on South 8th Street. Somebody said there's a bowling alley down there. I said, I don't know where a bowling alley's at. But you know where that pizza place at now? Is it Mercurio's?
Yeah.
I think it was 2 lanes downstairs, down the basement.
Okay.
I got a job setting pins.
Setting bowling pins.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I set pins there. I did that for about 8 or 9 months. And they didn't know I wasn't going to school. Mom and Dad did.
Yeah.
My brother and sisters didn't tell on me. So I done that, and then I got to want to do something else. So Fred Powers had Powerhouse Restaurant.
Yeah.
He started that on Main Street. He had a little deal set up out on the sidewalk. He would go and buy him a pound of hamburger, a package of buns, come back and cook those and sell them for a nickel apiece, I think it was.
Okay.
Something like that. Anyway, one day I went down through there, and he was talking to this other guy. He was going to open a restaurant down on the corner of, I think, 4th and Main,
Yeah.
4th or 5th. And he did. And I went down there and applied for a job, and he hired me.
Okay.
Peeling potatoes.
Making French fries, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, what he did, he sliced those things up. They were so thin, and he'd fry them on this grill, and he'd have them things packed up like this, you know.
Yeah.
And he'd sell his breakfast. He'd have eggs and gravy and fried potatoes.
Yeah.
And he sold those things like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
And that's how he went and rose up to
Right.
Powerhouse.
Yeah.
So, but I did that, and I got tired of that after a while. I was 15, about maybe 15 and a half. And I said, I got to do something else. I don't like this all the time, peeling potatoes. And so I talked to my dad. My dad had got a job at F&N Lawnmower Company. And I talked to him. I said, I want to do something else. I want to go. I want to see the world. That's what I said. He said, well, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
You're good.
So-
You're good.
So he talked to Earl Brown. There was a guy in shipping department there. And I went and seen Earl. I was almost 16 then. I was a little over 15. And he said, I don't have anything right now, but he said, come back tomorrow. And he said, I might have something for you. So I went back the next morning, and he hired me, put me in the shipping department. And I was boxing up these gears, little gears, round gears, for his lawnmowers, putting them in a box, and we was shipping them off. And I did that for about 9 months,
Okay.
9 or 10, somewhere around there. And I still had the urge to want to go see the world. So by that time, I'd turned 16. My aunt had moved to town, and I talked to her. Well, let me turn this thing.
Oh, you're good.
Got
I
it.
talked to her about me going in the Army.
Okay.
And I said, I can't get in because I'm just 16. I said, you'd have to sign that I'm 17. Oh, she didn't want to do that. So finally, I kept at her and kept at her and kept at her. She finally did.
Okay.
She signed for me to go in the Army
At 16, but you
at 16.
said you were 17.
Yeah. And so they took my basic training in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Okay.
I was there like 12 weeks, something like that. And they shipped me off to Seattle, Washington, Fort Lewis.
Yeah.
I was on TDY there for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then they put me on a boat and sent me to Japan. I was on that ship for 28 days. Whew. Man, I thought, what have I got myself into?
28 days on a boat.
Oh, man. And we got into some bad storms, too. Well, I got there. I said, well, they attached me to the 532nd Amphibious Seabees.
Okay.
And I didn't know nothing about the Seabees. I couldn't swim or nothing. I didn't know nothing about swimming. Anyway.
So you're on the boat for 28 days.
28 days.
And now they want you to be, what was it called?
They attached me to the 532nd Amphibious Seabees when I got there.
So what's that mean? I don't know what that is.
Well, we built floating bridges and
Okay.
helicopter pads, different things like that. And it was part of heavy equipment stuff, too.
Right.
I learned how to operate some heavy equipment. And
What year would this have been, do you know, roughly?
that's 53.
53.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was born in 37,
Okay.
so I was 16,
Yeah.
but the Army thought I was 17.
Right.
But it's a bad thing. But anyway, I stayed there for almost 13 months, and it deactivated, and they sent me to Korea, South Korea, in Seoul. I got a real good outfit there. While I was in Japan, I made PFC. I got to Korea, and I was there a few months, and I made corporal.
Okay.
Well, my company commander wanted me to go to NCO club, or to NCO Academy. I went to the NCO Academy, and I think it was 90-some guys in that class, and I graduated 6th.
Wow.
Really?
And they promoted me to staff sergeant.
And at this time, you're probably 17 years old, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
I was 17 then.
Wow.
And really, at that time, I would have been probably the youngest staff sergeant in the Army, but they didn't know it.
Right.
But anyway, I stayed there. It was almost 14 months in Korea. And then I come home, got married, and that was the end of my military.
Okay.
And we got married, and this was in 56 when I come home. I come home 56. We got married in October 56.
Okay.
And September of 57, we had our first baby.
Okay. So then life really changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Let me tell you. After that, he was born, and then we had him. We had him home about 2 months or 2 weeks, and he was sick. He wouldn't eat, and all he wanted to do was sleep. So they said he had encephalitis.
Okay.
That was a sleeping sickness, you know. So we had to put him in the hospital, and he stayed out there 3.5 months. And they told us that we could take him home on this Friday. They said, well, you can take him home tomorrow. So we went out there Saturday. They changed their mind, said we couldn't take him home. He had pneumonia.
Mm.
Well, he lived till Monday and passed away.
Oh, no.
So that was devastating to me and my wife. I don't think she ever got over it.
Yeah.
But we loaded him. We had to took him to Stegall, Burrhead, and they fixed him all up. And then we took him to Kentucky.
Okay.
We didn't have the money to buy up here, and so her parents had some land down there, and they donated his plot to bury him.
Okay.
We put him in the back seat of our 53 Ford, took him down there and buried him.
Oh, man.
And my wife, she never did get over it.
Yeah.
I mean, she lived with that the rest of her life. It just bothered her. You know, it bothered me, but not like her.
Right.
So this could take a long time. But After that, I went to work for D-Bolt Construction.
Okay.
And I helped move the first dirt that was moved out there where the old NATCO building was at. You know, originally it was Bucyrus Erie.
Okay.
And I helped move the first dirt there. And then one day a friend of mine come by and he said, Jim, he says, I hear you're looking for a full-time job. I said, I got to have a full-time job. We just worked when the weather was right. If it's raining, we didn't work.
Right.
So he worked for Pittsburgh Plate Glass Company. And he said, well, I'm leaving, going to Florida. He was going to get into Watkins Products, salesperson. So he said, if you go down there, you might get a job. So I went down and talked to him. He was an old German guy named Leo Hess. And I told him what I wanted. He said, well, he says, I'm too busy right now. But he said, if you come back in the morning, he said, we'll see what we can do. Well, I went back. I wasn't expecting to go to work, but he put me to work. I sat back there on a table, a little bit bigger than this, cutting scrap glass all day. And break it up and put it on. Some pieces he'd say, I want you to cut it in squirrels. And then he'd say, I want you to cut it in a pattern or whatever. And I'd do different things, and I'd stack them in different stacks. Okay. I did that all day. Well, at the end of the day, he said, you got a job. 65 cents an hour.
Okay. And that was the start of your glass profession.
That started my glass business.
65 cents an hour.
That started my life in glass. And I stayed with it until 2003.
Yeah.
I never did nothing else. I worked for Gordon Gray Glass. After Pittsburgh, I worked there for 8 years.
Yeah.
And I worked for Gordon Gray for 12 years.
Yeah.
And then I went to work for Richmond Glass, and I worked there 3.5 years. And me and the owner of that glass, new guy bought it. Mike Parker bought it. And me and Mike, I liked Mike and he liked me, but we just didn't see eye to eye. Right. So I said, I got to do something. So I called the hall. We was union, and they sent me up to Lafayette, Central Indiana Glass. Mm-hmm. Bob Miller was the manager up there. And he put me to work fabricating. Well, it was a good job. I was inside. I didn't work outside none. And I worked up there for 2 years. They built a Caterpillar plant up there on Route 26.
Yeah.
And I fabricated just about all the aluminum windows and things
for that
could be fabricated.
Yeah.
There, I did it.
Okay.
Now, the bigger stuff that they ordered in, it was already fabricated.
Right.
Sort of like Kelly does.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I stayed up there. It was 2 years. I'd go on Monday. He allowed me to come in on Monday at 9 o'clock.
So you could drive up there.
Yeah. And he allowed me to leave on Friday at 2 o'clock.
Okay.
So I could get home.
Yeah.
He's a good man. And I did that for 2 years. And I was missing home.
Yeah.
I was gone every week, and I didn't like it. So one day I was driving home, and I said, I got to do something about this. I can't keep this up. So I told my wife when I got home, I says, I'm going to quit. I said, I'm going to start my own business. Oh, boy. She said, you can't do that. You can't run no business. Well, she was right. I mean, I knew the construction part of it. I knew how to build and how to make and how to install and all of that stuff, but I didn't know nothing about the administrative part of it.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I got to do something. I can't do this. I just can't stay away. So there's a little restaurant down on North 8th and E called Paul Lee's.
Mm-hmm.
I'd go down there, and I was sitting there talking one day to Chalk Mosey on Mosey Manufacturing.
Yeah.
And I told Chalk, I said, I'm looking for a building to start me a business. Do you have anything? He said, no, not nothing like that. But he said, I'll tell you, somebody might. He said, there's Frank and John Yearling. As Yearling Contractors.
Yeah.
Well, I run into Frank the next day. There he was at Paul Lee's. And I tell Frank about it because I knew both of them. And he said, well, Jim, he said, I don't know. He said, John might. He said, go down and see John down on South 8th. Well, it happened to be that John had a Quonset hut building back there. It's back behind that fire department there.
Yep. Yeah, it's still there.
Well, I went there and talked to him, and he said, the only thing I got is this building behind me here on 9th Street. He said, it's just like a drive-through lumber shed. We walked over, but he had one section there. It was probably about as big as this is wide, and maybe half again as long as out there at that white wall.
Yeah.
And it was pretty rugged. Didn't have no glass front or nothing. And I sat back again. But anyway, we looked over and I said, well, how much would it cost me? He said, well, I'll tell you what. He said, I'll make you a deal. If you come in here and fix it up like you want it, he said, I'll give you 6 months free. Well, that kind of sounded okay.
Yeah.
Because I knew I could do it.
Right.
And I had a friend of mine. He was 18 years old, and he just went to work for Perfect Circle. But I'd known him for years. He'd come down there every evening after he got on Perfect Circle and help me. I took him up on it, and we got the building where it was presentable.
Right.
I didn't have no glass front in it yet, but I had a little office made up front in the showroom and a place to cut glass and we built us a table and things. And John came over to see how it was going, and he said, you're doing okay, Jim. He said, it looks good. I said, well, I'm trying. He said, I know you are. And I said, my 6 months is about up. He said, well, I'm just going to give you 6 more. So I got a whole year.
So what a blessing.
For nothing.
Yeah.
Just what I put into it myself.
Yeah.
And after that, when I opened up in 81, I put a little sign out in front, and it had the lights flicking on and off with an arrow on it. Buddy, I went about 6 weeks. Didn't have nobody. I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
I thought, oh boy, my wife was right.
Yeah.
I messed up. Well, one day, I think it was on a Wednesday or Thursday one, this lady come up from Brookville, Indiana.
Yeah.
And she stopped in, and she had a frame about this wide and maybe about that tall, and it was kind of jagged on the top. The mirror was broke in it. She wanted to know if we could fix that. I said, well, I think I could do that, no, without a problem. She said, there's only one catch to it. I need it back by 4 o'clock. Because I'm going back to Brookville, and she said, I'm not coming back for a while.
Well, you had a lot of work to get done before then, right?
So we said, well, we'll do it.
Yeah.
So we got it for her. She come back, paid me, and she was tickled to death. And it was about $27.
Yeah, that was your first sale.
Yeah. I still got the first dollar.
Do you? That's pretty neat.
And, but that's pretty much how I got started.
Yeah.
But then we stayed in that building I got a little ahead of myself there too. After my year was up and I started my business, he come back and asked me if I'd be interested in buying the building. I said, I'd probably be interested, but I can't afford it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said, we'll make it so you can. I said, okay, how much? He said, well, if you want the building, you can have it for $25,000. I said, well, I'll see what my bank will say.
Yeah.
So I went up to the bank's Old National.
Right.
I went up there and told them what the deal was and everything. And they took all my information and everything I gave them. They called me the next day and said I'd been approved.
What'd you think?
I thought, man,
How'd I do that?
how? Yeah. So, boy, I was on cloud nine.
Oh, I bet.
You know, I was going to own my building.
Yeah.
Well, I did that, and we stayed in that building 8 years. And I got it fixed up pretty nice.
Yeah.
Put a nice front on it and everything. But it was still a shed.
Yeah.
So then I put the word out, it was for sale. That building where you're at now, it came up for sale, and I wanted that.
Yeah.
And that had that little tiny diner restaurant sitting on the parking lot there at that time.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'll see what I can do about that. So I put, oh, come on. I should have left that.
Maybe that's the bank calling.
Anyway, let me gather my thoughts back here. Anyway, we
So the
Got to
tiny diner was on there, and it came up for sale.
yeah, and I checked into it and seen what they wanted for it and everything. So I put a price on my place, and I forget the name. Is Vaughn's Cleaning Service or somebody down on 9th Street?
Yeah.
They come down there. Oh, they're really interested in it
Yeah.
because they could drive their trucks through, you know, and
Yeah.
it was really nice what they wanted. So I told them what I wanted, and they didn't even question the price. They bought it. Well, I turned around, and I went over and bought the other one. And I got enough out of that to pay for the building where you're at now.
Okay.
And I still had some money left. And then I built that building in the back.
Yeah. Fab shop. Yeah.
And so I got all of that out of what I got out of that building.
Good for you.
And it worked out good.
Yeah.
You know, well, we was growing.
Yeah.
Business was growing. We was doing a lot of work. And I told, now this, I got a little ahead of myself again. So you remember Geneva Allen?
No.
Her son owns Manpower.
Oh, Mike Allen. Yeah.
Well, she set my books up
Okay.
for me. And then she recommended that I get a bookkeeper.
Mm-hmm.
And she recommended a lady named Dixie Lieberman.
Yeah. I know Dixie.
And you knew Dixie. And she worked for me for 15 years.
Yeah.
Did a good job. And her husband came to work. He had retired from Farm Bureau Insurance. And he was looking for something so I hired him as a salesman. He'd
Yeah.
go out and call on people, you know. And he worked for me for about almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And he got sick and had some difficulties, so he quit.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long after that Dixie started having problems too,
Yeah.
you know. And then my wife had problems. She got Parkinson's. And at that time I said, I can't do this no more, you know. I'm still getting ahead of myself, but you guys can straighten it out.
Yeah.
So I decided to get rid of it after Van Fleet had come in and talked to me.
Yeah.
I said, well, you know, if you get somebody that's interested in it, and I can get what I want out of it. I sold it too cheap, by the way.
I was going to say you sold it a little high. That's pretty good, Jim.
That's awesome.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah.
So that would have been that was 2003.
Huh?
That was 2003.
2003.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Brad Van Vliet, who he and I were college roommates, and
Yeah, he told me.
yeah, and he called and he said, "Hey, there's this little glass shop for sale," and he knew that you know I was engaged to be married to my wife, and that we were down in Cincinnati, and we wanted to move back home and start a family, and he calls me and tells me about this little glass shop, so I sent my parents to come
Yeah.
over and to meet you, and they came and met with you, and then that night, Dad called me and he said, "Hey, I think you need to come check this out."
Yeah.
And then so then I came up, and so I'm just curious, what was your thoughts? I mean, obviously you were to the point where, you had grown this business from 1981, and this was 2003, so we're talking 20 plus years of doing your own thing. Had a lot of success, had a great name, and then you meet a 23-year-old kid. What was your first thoughts?
Well, my first thoughts was, well, if I could do it, he can do it,
Yeah.
And I said, well, maybe I'm making a mistake getting rid of it,
Yeah.
My wife, at first, she told me I was crazy for starting it. Then I was crazy for getting rid of it. But it got to the point where I really couldn't take care of her and run the business.
Yeah.
And but the fortunate thing about my being in business was that I was able to surround myself with good people that knew and would learn and do me a good job. I had a few people that wasn't worth having.
Right.
But the ones that I kept and one that was there was dandies.
Yeah.
You take like Kelly.
Yeah.
Now, Kelly was fresh out of high school. He took building trades. And I never one time went to Kelly and say, can you do this or will you do that? And he didn't do it.
Yeah.
He performed. And then Tony was in Germany when I started the business. And when he come back, he started working for me.
Yeah.
And he worked there for 40 years, I guess it is.
Well, he just, and I want to stop you there for a second, because, what's really unique in there's the bank calling again. What's really unique, I think, about, a couple things that you've said. There's no more important thing in any business than its people. Mm-hmm. You've got to have good people.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean you got to have people that know the business inside and out, but you got to have people who are going to show up, who are going to do what's right.
Right.
And who, at the end of the day, are good people.
Yeah.
And so you talk about Kelly and Tony. Kelly still works for me.
Yeah.
Right. So him and Tony both, the business sells, and here comes this 23-year-old kid who doesn't know much about glass. Those were some challenging times, not only for me just to try to figure things out, but I know for those guys as well.
Yeah.
But, I'm fortunate enough that they were able, they stuck around. They had faith in me for whatever reason. And Tony just recently retired here in the past month. And, 40 plus years of working for the same small business in Richmond, Indiana. And Kelly is still going, still cranking, still, he's a master of his craft.
Yeah.
And he'll be retiring in the next couple of years, I know is his plans. But, there's two guys right there that started with you, in 1981, 82, 83, somewhere along those lines, and had the faith in you as a man that you could do it, grow with you. 23-year-old kid comes in, same thing. It speaks volumes, I think, to those guys.
It does.
For them, they could easily jump ship. I mean, there's no doubt there's times in their careers where somebody would have come calling to try to steal them, whether it's another glass company, construction company. I'm not naive enough to think that, they just stayed with me because I'm some super guy. They just had faith in the business. They had built it. They had helped build it. And I think it's such a unique thing, for this small little company to have these guys stick around for that long. And it's a testament to you because of the foundation that you built. Yeah. And it's very unique.
Well, I was going to cover that stuff, but now we don't have to.
No, it's just it's an awesome thing, especially in this day and age with these young kids who, you know, when I look at resumes for people and I see someone who's been out of high school for 5 years but had 15 different jobs. Where's the loyalty? Yeah, you know, and that they actually put those on their resume. Like, that's not a good thing. You know, businesses are looking for people who want to come in and want to learn and understand that you got to start at the bottom.
That's right.
And then work your way up.
That's right.
And you know, it just takes time. It takes consistency. And so it's a really, I think it's one thing that helps to separate Catron's Glass, you know, over the past 40 some years since 1981.
Yeah.
As a pretty cool place.
Yeah.
You know, a pretty cool place to work.
Well, I'm thankful that it worked out the way it did, but at one time I offered the company to Tony and Kelly.
Yeah.
But they didn't believe me.
Yeah.
But they didn't believe I'd do it. But I would have done it.
Yeah.
You know, when my wife got sick and I couldn't take care of her and be there and do my job, so I decided when Eric told me what he did, I said, well, I'll talk to him.
Yeah.
And I felt like when I talked to you guys, and especially your dad, I said, these are some good people.
Yeah.
And I said, I think they can go places that I can't.
Yeah.
You know, and you have.
Yeah.
I mean, I never looked at it as a business that it's turned out to be. I wanted something to make a living for my family.
Right.
I was never interested in being rich or all of that, you know. I just wanted a comfortable life for my family.
Yeah.
And that's what I tried to do.
Right.
And but I'm thrilled that you guys have got it. There's a lot of things that I could still talk about, but I just like competition. You ain't got none.
No.
And that's great.
It is. Yeah.
I had 5 shops at one time.
Yeah.
I mean, all competing against me.
Right.
And some of them I can say good things about, and some I can't.
Right.
You know?
And we'll leave it at that.
Huh?
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll leave it right at that. That's as far as it's going.
Yeah. So, but in 2003, when I bought the business in Little Richmond, Indiana, there was 5 glass shops at that time.
Yeah.
And then slowly they started to, you know, there was a national company that went away.
Yeah.
There was another smaller shop that the owner had passed away, and then things just kind of happened. And
that's right.
And I'm not going to say that for me it was never easy. The first 10 years for me were very, very challenging.
Oh, sure it was.
And I think a lot of that's youth, just not knowing, just trying to figure things out. You know, it's when you know, I was in the construction field building houses. So I had some construction knowledge, but I didn't really know much about glass.
Right.
You know, and I certainly didn't know much about managing people.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, you go from this big corporate environment where I was at in Cincinnati, and you come to a little small town USA, and you go from, you know, all these people working at this big company to this small company, and it turns into a family. Yeah. And so it gets personal. It gets there's just a lot different challenges from the corporate environment to the small business world. Yeah. So there was some very, very challenging times just learning how to manage all that stuff.
I had a bunch of those.
Yeah. So maybe talk about that. So as you're growing up and you're growing the business and you're starting, what are some of the most difficult things that you had to deal with in managing or running the business?
Managing was never one of my good traits. I mean, I never was much of a manager as far as managing people. I always had it built up in myself. I could do most anything I wanted to, but I never was interested in being in charge of people or telling people what to do. You know, it just wasn't in me.
Yeah.
But I learned how to do what I did, but I still wasn't the best. I was hard to work for.
Yeah.
At one time. I had people would tell me afterwards, well, Jim, you're hard. Well, I said, it's my way or the highway.
Yeah.
I said, I'm paying you guys to do a job, and I want you to do it.
Right.
And I said, if you're going to come in here, it got to me one time, they go next door to the village pantry. They had a half an hour for lunch. They go to village pantry, stand in line for 15 minutes, get their food, come back over and sit down for 30 minutes and eat. Well, I said, you guys are taking an hour on me. I said, you're supposed to get a half an hour. 5 minutes or something like that, I didn't worry about it. You know?
Right.
But when he got into it, and I said, well, if you don't want to do it, there's the door, and it all swings out, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I said, if that's what you want to do, go. So some of them quit because they didn't want to do that.
Right.
Well, I got a bad name for it. People says I was too hard to work for. And I know I was. I've learned a lot.
Right.
I was at the beginning. I was hard to work for. And I didn't mean to be, but I was.
Yeah.
So that was one of my biggest challenges is learning how to work with people and get people to do what I wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't go about it the right way.
Yeah.
Because I didn't.
You didn't know.
I never knew.
Yeah. And I think you talk to anybody that owns a business, a small business, so no matter what size, however many people you're managing, that's the hardest thing in anything is learning how to manage those people and manage those personalities. And I can tell you from experience, you know, from when we bought the business, you know, there were 4 people there, and now between the glass shop and the farm, we're up to 20 people total.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get any easier, right? Because everybody is a little different in their mentality and what they think, and everybody's had different experiences in life, and so it's as an owner, it's challenging. That I think I know you talk to any business owner, they're going to tell you managing people is the hardest thing, and I think if I could have a wish for anyone, it would be that you have the opportunity someday to manage people. Yeah. Because it'll give you a whole nother respect for a business owner or someone in HR or anybody who has to, you know, try to get someone to go to do this job at this time. It's very, very challenging. That's the most challenging part of business.
That's right. Yeah. I have to mention one more guy that worked for me. Me and him worked together before I ever went in business, was Ed Neely.
Yeah, Ed was a good man.
He was a good man.
Yeah.
A good worker.
Yeah. You
got 110% of him all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was there. Ed was, he had retired when I bought the business, but I was able to get Ed to come back on some part-time to help us on some big commercial stuff. And I, you know, Kelly and Tony would tell me stories about Ed back in the day, you know, where he probably was a little like you, where he wasn't going to put up with anything.
Right.
And if there was a job to do, he expected you to do it. But I got the different Ed. Yeah. I got the kinder, gentler Ed who was, he really, I think, not that he took me under his wing, but he would always come in the office at the end of the day and just very mild mannered and have a good conversation and, you know, hey, you're doing a good job. And, just a super man. And I was at the hospital when he passed away. Yeah. And, you know, it was tough to see Ed in that position. And,
he was a good man.
He was a very, very, very good man and very impactful on my life as far as in the glass industry and as a man in general.
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't say enough good about him.
Yeah. Well, Jim, this is great. I want to ask you a question. I want you to think about it. Are there any closing thoughts, Bible verse, quote, something that you live by, you've lived throughout your life where, you know, when times are tough or when you're down in the dumps, you think of this Bible verse, or you think of this quote, or you think of something someone has told you throughout your life. Is there something that you can think of that you can share with our listeners that help you to get through difficult times?
That's good. Well, I've had some difficulties in my lifetime. Things go wrong for me, you know, and I can always call on the Lord.
That's right.
And say, God, I need help. I need help now. I don't need it tomorrow. I need it now. Yeah. You know, and it's always seems like it's happened that he'll come back and He won't talk. I don't hear an audible voice, nothing like that. But the thought will come to my mind, there's a better day tomorrow.
Yeah.
And things are looking up for you. You know, when I went in business, I wasn't a spiritual guy. You know, I went to church, but that's all I did was go.
Yeah.
You know. But when I look back and I think about the times that when I read in the Bible where Jesus hung on that cross, suffered his life and gave it up for us, all of us, you know. And it says we're supposed to be more like him. Well, that's tough.
It is.
I mean, he was God's only son, and he was sent to this earth to do a job, and he did it to his fullest. And I feel like that if I do my part in life, he's going to do his part with me.
Yeah.
You know, I've come up short in a lot of ways. You know, I go to church. I try to do what's right. I treat people as good as I know how. And I think the main thing is for us to treat our brothers and our sisters like we want to be treated.
Yep.
You know, nobody wants to be treated bad. So if I can treat you like I want to be treated, I'm happy with myself.
Yeah.
Because God, that's what he says for us to do.
That's right.
Treat your brothers and sisters like yourself.
Yeah.
And that's all I know to do. I never was taught much. I never had no education. You know, you can put this in here if you want to. But when I quit school, I was in the 4th grade, and that's as far as I ever went.
From 4th grade
Yes.
to managing a very successful glass company.
Yeah.
Right? That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That should be an inspiration to anybody. Now, we don't want kids to drop out of school.
Right.
But the point is that you can do anything, no matter what cards you're dealt in your life, right? If you put your mind to it, if you're focused, if you
can
work
do it.
hard, you can
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love all people. I don't just, you know, you got all kinds of people out there. But the heart is what it's all about.
That's right.
It's not about that person's face or his body or their stature or whatever.
It's what's in their heart.
It's what's in the heart.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's about it. You know, I just want to treat everybody good.
Yeah. And you have.
Now, 10 or 15 years ago, I wouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
You know, because I just wouldn't. But I've learned a lot in my older age.
Yeah.
You know.
No, that's great advice. You know, and it's very true. Ben, do you have as a rookie in the glass industry? So I hired Ben. Ben was selling guns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I hired Ben. You know, we talk about good people, right? And you meet somebody and you know they're a good person, and Ben's a good man.
Yeah.
And fortunate enough to get him on the Catron's Glass team, but no experience. So he is starting back where you did when you were, what, 20-some years old, when you were at Pittsburgh Plate and Glass?
Well, when I went to work for Pittsburgh Plate Glass, I was 19,
Okay.
18 or 19, somewhere around there. I just got married.
Yeah.
So,
And I was 23
yeah.
when I got into the glass
Yeah.
industry. Ben's not,
36.
I was going to say 40, but not quite 40. Ben, any questions you could think of for Jim that maybe he didn't hit on that you have?
No, I'm pretty sure every single day when I go out and talk to Kelly, he'll always say something about Jim Catron. Like, it's never Jim. Like, if he would say Jim, we would know exactly who it is. But every time we'll say something, he'll say Jim Catron. And I feel like every day Kelly goes back and
Yeah.
You know, goes back to what you taught him.
Yeah.
And just working with Tony, I got to do installs and stuff with Tony earlier in the year. And no, you just, like Dan said, you could tell, like, they are Catrons all the way. Like, the loyalty and everything is all a testament to you and what you've built. So it's just a pleasure to finally get to meet you and hear your story.
Well, I just knew when I was early on that I didn't want what I had when I was growing up.
Right.
I wanted things to be different.
Yeah.
You know, and growing up, things don't go right. You have bad feelings about things, and if you aren't careful, you let them grow on you, and they'll stay with you.
Yeah.
But I wanted to shed those things.
Right.
I still remember them.
Right.
But I didn't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
What I had back then, and I didn't want my children to be.
Right.
You know. So.
Well, Jim Catron, you're a good man.
Well, don't build me up too much.
I'm very appreciative for your mentorship to me as a young kid with not knowing anything in the glass industry. And, you know, I'm grateful for the foundation that you built with that business and you know, to give me the opportunity to, you know, to take it and run with it. And, you know, so I'm super appreciative of your leadership. And I have a lot of people ask me, they're like, you know, why didn't you change the name? You know, why didn't you do that? Well, I didn't need to, right?
Yeah.
Catron's Glass had a great name, still has a good name. And, you know, so I'm super, super grateful for what you built.
Well, I appreciate that. It's good for me to know that my name's on that sign hanging out there.
Yeah.
And it's still going
Yeah.
by good people.
Yeah.
You know?
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, good.
So,
Well, everybody, I hope you you gained some business knowledge and some recognition that, you know, you take a man like Jim who fourth grade education, but he was determined to make something work in his life. And he certainly did. And so we're grateful. So we appreciate your ears. We appreciate you listening to Jim's story, and go out and be tempered.
Hi, my name is Allie Schmidt. This is my dad, Dan. He owns Catron's Glass.
Thanks, Allie. Things like doors and windows go into making a house. But when it's your home, you expect more, like the great service and selection you'll get from Catron's Glass. Vinyl replacement windows from Catron's come with a lifetime warranty, including accidental glass breakage replacement. Also ask for custom shower doors and many other products and services. Call 962-1636, locally owned with local employees for nearly 30 years.
Catron's Glass, the clear choice.